Welcome to Mystery Minds, your portal to the unexplored, the eerie, the enigmatic. Our journey today will traverse 10 states across the Americas, each one a vault of hidden secrets so startling, so unnerving. They've remained veiled in mystery and concealment for countless years. We'll unearth of terrifying face-offs, scandalous machinations, institutional atrocities and political intrigue that have been hidden from public view. As we piece together the puzzle of these chilling narratives, ask yourself, how much do you really know about the history that surrounds you and where you live? Remember, if you're keen to venture further into the worlds of dark history, the mysterious and the strange, hit that like button as hard as you can and subscribe to Mystery Minds for more unusual top 10s. Dark history, the mysterious, and topics that leave you questioning everything in the world around you. Now, strap in and prepare to journey back in time to visit the dark corners of 10 states in America. The road is dark, the stories are darker. Welcome to the shadows of history.
What if I told you a peaceful mountain retreat could turn into a deadly standoff? Picture this: Ruby Ridge, Idaho, a serene wilderness where Randy Weaver, a former Green Beret, and his family sought solitude away from the world's chaos. But this tranquility was soon to be disrupted. Federal authorities, suspecting Weaver's links to white supremacist groups, began encroaching on their secluded existence. Little did they know, their tranquil haven was about to become a national flashpoint. The tranquil beauty of Ruby Ridge soon became a battleground. This serene refuge was torn apart by a deadly standoff. Federal authorities, suspecting Weaver's ties with extremist groups, stormed in with excessive force. Their attack claimed the lives of Weaver's wife and son, turning their peaceful haven into a scene of heartbreak and horror. Allegations of government overreach began to surface, painting a grim picture of a botched operation. The standoff ended, but the controversy was just beginning. In the aftermath, questions rose faster than answers. Allegations against the government swirled like a storm, accusations of brutality and cover-ups tinging the air with an unsettling sense of unease. Was this a case of an overzealous government asserting dominance? Or was there more to the story? The truth, as it often does, lay somewhere in the shadows. As the story unfolded, Randy Weaver emerged as a symbol of resistance, his name becoming synonymous with defiance against perceived tyranny. But beneath this narrative, doubts lingered. Was Weaver truly a victim of unjust persecution, or was there a darker side to this tale? The standoff at Ruby Ridge, a spectacle of power and resistance, was marred by questions of hidden agendas and ulterior motives. And even now, years later, the true nature of the incident remains shrouded in mystery. As the dust settled on Ruby Ridge, its echoes continue to resonate, a chilling reminder of a tragedy that should never have happened.
Number 9, California. Imagine a state-sanctioned program that sterilized over 20,000 people without their consent. Welcome to the dark underbelly of California's history, the eugenics program. A chilling testament to a time when the Golden State was gripped by a disturbing movement. Eugenics aimed to improve the genetic quality of the population. The method, controlling reproduction by forcibly sterilizing individuals deemed unfit or undesirable. This isn't a dystopian novel, it's a chapter from California's past. In the early 20th century, California led the way in a disturbing movement, eugenics. This pseudoscience, masked as a means to better the population, had a sinister agenda. Prominent scientists and state officials pushed this movement into the limelight, backed by laws like the 1909 Breeders' Bill and the 1913 Sterilization Act. These laws empowered the state to sterilize thousands, predominantly from marginalized communities, under the guise of genetic improvement. But who were the victims of this scientific facade? Those with disabilities, mental illness, and minorities became the targets of this horrifying program. They were often cast as burdens, unfit to reproduce. The violation of their rights was egregious. Forced into surgical procedures without informed consent, they were betrayed by the very institutions meant to protect them. Coerced, misled, and manipulated into sterilization, they were stripped of their dignity and autonomy. This was a grave injustice, a dark chapter in our history. The scars of this program are still felt today. The legacy of California's eugenics program is a sobering reminder of unchecked scientific hubris and systemic oppression. The trauma and stigma of forced sterilization still haunt many victims and their families, shaping contemporary debates on reproductive, disability rights, and social justice. This grim episode has left an indelible mark, influencing our understanding of human rights and the abuse of power under the guise of scientific progress. The echoes of this dark chapter in California's history continue to reverberate, serving as a stark warning for the future.
Number 8. Oregon State Hospital, unveiling the grim realities of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This towering edifice, securely tucked away in the heartland of Oregon, bears witness to a chronicle saturated with chilling stories that could make your skin crawl. The hospital was constructed in the twilight of the 19th century, and its formidable structure has silently stood guard over countless narratives of devastation and optimism. Its eerie tales were brought to the forefront of public consciousness in the universally acclaimed movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This cinematic representation portrayed a harrowing picture of the mental health infrastructure, using the hospital as the primary backdrop. Its haunting passages and grim visage highlight the stark realities of the era's mental health care, reflecting upon an era of brutality and neglect. The spine-tingling tales that were once confined within its walls are now etched forever in film history. Even today, the hospital stands as a grim reminder of the brutal past of mental health care, its echoing corridors whispering secrets of a time long gone. In the heart of Oregon, a grim chapter of history was etched in 1883 with the establishment of the Oregon State Hospital. A beacon of hope was raised, promising care for those grappling with mental illnesses. This institution, it was believed, would serve as a sanctuary, a place of solace and rehabilitation for individuals and their families touched by the shadow of mental health challenges. But as the years rolled on, the promise of care turned into a nightmare of mistreatment. The walls of the Oregon State Hospital bear silent witness to a history of cruelty and neglect. Men and women, once patients, were subjected to the unimaginable conditions. Overcrowding was rampant, with individuals crammed into unsanitary quarters, their basic needs often overlooked. The hospital's staff, rather than offering solace, became agents of physical and emotional torment. The pain amplified by the chilling echo of the hospital's walls, a constant reminder of their confinement. Then, in the 1940s, a beacon of hope emerged in the form of Nellie Bly, a fearless journalist. She infiltrated the facility, revealing the shocking truth of the hospital's inner workings to the world. The world was shocked by Nellie's revelations, but the horror within the hospital continued. The grim realities of the Oregon State Hospital reached the world through the pages of Ken Kesey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The novel served as a stark portrayal of the hospital's troubled history, casting a spotlight on the inhumane conditions and mistreatment suffered by its patients. It painted a horrifying picture that left a lasting impression on readers worldwide. Yet, the chilling tale of the Oregon State Hospital doesn't end with fiction. Many survivors have since come forward recounting their own harrowing experiences within its walls. Their stories echo with trauma and despair, each one a testament to the dark past of this institution. The Oregon State Hospital's story is a grim reminder of the inhumanity that can lurk behind the facade of care and compassion. Number 7. Utah: The Mountain Meadows Massacre of 1857. Ever wondered what happens when religious and political tensions escalate into an unfathomable act of violence and betrayal? In the mid-19th century, a group of 120 Christian immigrants, the Baker-Fancher wagon train, journeyed through southern Utah on their way to California. On September 7, 1857, the Baker-Fancher wagon train found themselves surrounded by a Mormon militia composed of local settlers and Native American allies near Mountain Meadows in southern Utah. Under the guise of offering protection, the militia persuaded the emigrants to surrender their weapons and supplies, promising safe passage in return. However, what followed was a horrifying act of betrayal and violence. On September 11th, the militia launched a brutal attack on the emigrants, massacring men, women, and children in cold blood. The emigrants were ambushed and brutally unalived, with only a handful of survivors managing to escape the carnage. In a brutal and calculated assault, the Mormon militia surrounded the emigrants' camp, besieging them for several days before launching a deadly ambush. Under the guise of a truce, the militiamen lured the emigrants out of their fortified position before opening fire, resulting in a massacre that left men, women, and children unalived. In the aftermath of the massacre, a web of deceit and cover-ups was spun to conceal the truth of what had occurred. Mormon church leaders, including Brigham Young, sought to distance themselves from the atrocity and deflect blame onto Native American tribes. They instructed local Mormons to remain silent about the massacre and work to suppress any evidence that might implicate the church or its members. For decades, the Mountain Meadows incident was shrouded in secrecy and denial, with Mormon leaders actively working to suppress information and manipulate public perception of the event. Efforts to uncover the truth were met with resistance and hostility, as church officials sought to protect the reputation of the Mormon faith and its leaders. The truth about the Mountain Meadows massacre remained buried beneath layers of denial and deception. It wasn't until the late 20th century that the full extent of Mormon involvement in the incident began to emerge, thanks to the efforts of historians, journalists, and descendants of the victims. However, many questions remain unanswered, and the scars of the Mountain Meadows massacre continue to haunt Utah's history, serving as a sobering reminder of the dangers of fanaticism, prejudice, and the abuse of power. The LDS Church wielded significant influence in political institutions throughout Utah and Idaho, leveraging its large membership base and organizational resources to advance its interests and maintain control over state and local governments. Church leaders often endorsed and supported political candidates who aligned with their beliefs and priorities, effectively shaping public policy and decision-making processes to reflect Mormon values. The church employed tactics of intimidation and social pressure to enforce conformity and discourage dissent among its members. Those who questioned or challenged church teachings or policies risked ostracism, excommunication, or other forms of punishment, creating a culture of fear and silence within Mormon communities. The LDS Church exerted control over media outlets and educational institutions in Utah and Idaho, influencing the dissemination of information and shaping public discourse on controversial issues. Church-owned newspapers and broadcasting networks often presented a sanitized version of events, downplaying or omitting negative stories that reflected poorly on the church or its leaders. Similarly, educational curricula in Mormon-dominated areas were tailored to promote LDS teachings and perspectives, reinforcing the church's influence over its members' beliefs and worldview. Overall, the LDS Church's efforts to hide the truth about the Mountain Meadows massacre and maintain control over its members and political institutions in Utah and Idaho were characterized by secrecy, manipulation, and exertion of power. Despite facing increased scrutiny and accountability in recent years, the Church continues to wield significant influence in the region, shaping the lives and beliefs of its members and maintaining its grip on political and social institutions. In 1999, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints finally acknowledged its role in the massacre and offered a formal apology to the victims' descendants. The Mountain Meadows massacre serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of fanaticism, prejudice, and the abuse of power, serving as a cautionary tale for future generations. The story of the Mountain Meadows massacre has since been immortalized in various forms of media, including the 2007 film September Dawn. As we reflect on this somber chapter, may we strive to learn from the mistakes of the past and work towards a future where justice, compassion, and truth prevail. Number 6. New York, the Brooklyn organ trafficking scandal. Have you ever wondered how far some people are willing to go for money and power? What if we told you that the answer might be much darker than you think? Picture Brooklyn in the 1990s, a borough pulsating with life yet hiding a macabre secret. At Biological Resource Center, a nondescript funeral home, whispers of illicit activities began to circulate. Stories of organ harvesting and trafficking emerged, but were met with skepticism and disbelief by state regulators and law enforcement. As whispers turned into loud accusations, the authorities could no longer ignore the growing outcry. What they discovered was beyond anyone's worst nightmares. At the heart of the scandal, a funeral home had been masquerading as a legitimate business, all the while running an intricate organ trafficking operation. The most vulnerable, often from marginalized communities, were targeted. Their bodies were exploited in death as they had been in life, organs harvested without consent and sold to the highest bidder, feeding a grotesque underground market. And the horror didn't stop there. The operation was not a lone wolf act. Corrupt officials and individuals in positions of power were complicit, turning a blind eye and, worse yet, profiting from this unthinkable exploitation. Their involvement in the cover-up deepened the betrayal, adding a sinister layer to an already horrifying crime. The shock and outrage echoed far beyond the borders of New York as the scandal exposed the darkest depths of human greed and power. A chilling reminder that sometimes the monsters we fear are not lurking in the shadows, but hiding in plain sight. In the wake of the scandal, the city and the nation were left reeling. Reforms were swiftly enacted, bolstering oversight and regulation of the funeral industry. Yet the victims' scars remain, their lives forever marked by this gruesome crime. Justice was served, perpetrators were held to account, but the echoes of their horrific deeds linger. As we reflect on the Brooklyn organ trafficking scandal, we are reminded of the lives forever altered and the importance of vigilance against corruption and exploitation. Number 5. Arkansas prison blood scandal, a dark chapter in healthcare history. The year was 1990. The place, Arkansas State Prisons, a scandal was brewing, rooted in unchecked greed and deceit. This is the Arkansas prison blood scandal. In this tale, inmates were coerced into donating their blood plasma under false pretenses. Unknown to them, their blood was sold to pharma companies, creating a hidden trade. Little did these inmates know their blood donations would set off a chain of events with devastating consequences. The blood plasma, tainted with HIV and hepatitis C, became a deadly cocktail distributed for profit. Despite knowledge of the contamination, state officials and pharmaceutical companies continued to trade in this lethal commodity. Imagine a web of deceit and greed where the health of countless individuals was compromised for monetary gain. As a result of this chilling trade, thousands were infected with HIV and hepatitis C. The scale of this disaster was enormous, with victims spread across the United States and beyond. State officials and pharmaceutical companies, the very institutions entrusted with safeguarding public health, played a central role in perpetuating this scandal. The devastating fallout of the scandal was felt across communities, with thousands infected and lives tragically lost. As the dust settled, the pursuit of justice began. A web of deceit, cover-ups and conspiracies was soon to be exposed. The aftermath of the scandal was a whirlwind of legal action. State officials and pharmaceutical executives found themselves under intense scrutiny, facing charges of fraud, conspiracy and negligence. The pursuit of justice was relentless, and convictions were handed down, holding those responsible accountable for their actions. Yet amidst the legal proceedings, theories surfaced suggesting more sinister motives behind the scandal. Was this a case of unchecked greed, or was it part of a larger, more nefarious agenda? These questions continue to haunt us. As we remember this dark chapter in healthcare history, it's a sobering reminder of the need for ethical standards and the importance of justice for the victims. Number 4. Alaska, the Mental Health Enabling Act of 1956. How might a well-intentioned act become a tool of oppression? Could the promise of better mental health care turn into a nightmare of forced institutionalization? Let's delve into the murky depths of the Alaska Mental Health Enabling Act of 1956. Picture Sarah, a young, vibrant Alaska Native woman living peacefully in her village. Then a visiting psychiatrist arrives and, despite her sound mind, labels her with schizophrenia. Sarah's world collapses as she's swept away to a state-run mental institution. No trial, no defense. Her pleas for release echo unheard through the cold, sterile corridors. For over a decade, Sarah endures neglect and mistreatment, her spirit crushed under the Act's iron fist. Then imagine James, a military veteran haunted by the horrors of war, seeks solace in mental health services, but instead of help, the Act's shadowy hand reaches out, pulling him into the same dreary institution as Sarah. His protests fall on deaf ears. His mental health deteriorates, worsened by subpar care. His service to his country forgotten, his voice silenced. The Alaska Mental Health Enabling Act of 1956, cloaked in benevolence, facilitated the involuntary institutionalization of individuals, particularly Alaska Natives, under the guise of mental health treatment. It tore families apart, stripped people of their rights, and subjected them to inhumane conditions and abuses. It was a dark chapter in Alaska's history, one that echoes through the years. The act left an indelible scar on the lives of Sarah, James, and countless others. It amplified the traumas they faced, while their cries for justice were stifled by bureaucratic obstacles and institutional reluctance. This exploration into the act's harsh realities uncovers a tale of discrimination, mistreatment, and systemic failure. It serves as a stark reminder of the need for vigilance when well-meaning policies are enacted, as they can often become tools of oppression if left unchecked. The story of the Alaska Mental Health Enabling Act of 1956 is a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of the past, and a call to action for the future. Number 3, Tennessee, the Children's Home Society scandal. What if I told you that one of the greatest child trafficking rings was not operated by syndicates or underworld criminals, but by a woman who was a pillar of authority and respect in her society? This woman was none other than Georgia Tann, more than just the acclaimed director of Tennessee Children's Home Society. Tann assumed the persona of an altruistic and tireless advocate for the voiceless children, creating an impeccable image of benevolence that was almost unshakable. Her organization, under her cunning leadership, grew into a beacon of hope for countless desperate souls seeking refuge and care. But who was Georgia Tann, really? A silver-haired woman with a businesslike demeanor, she was the epitome of respectability in Memphis society. She was frequently seen at social events, always impeccably dressed, surrounded by the city's elite, who admired her for her tireless to the cause of destitute children. Even Governor Gordon Browning and his administration was known to seek her counsel on matters of child welfare, adding weight to her carefully constructed image. Additionally, officials within the Tennessee Department of Children's Services and other state agencies were aware of Tann's illegal activities, but chose to ignore and cover up evidence of wrongdoing. These individuals were complicit in allowing Tann to continue her exploitation of vulnerable children for personal gain. Tennessee Children's Home Society, under the veneer of charity and benevolence, was in fact a front for a nefarious operation. A chilling narrative of deceit, exploitation, and inhumanity unfolded, shielded from the eyes of public. This institution, which was supposed to be a sanctuary for children, was instead a marketplace where innocent lives were bought and sold. Children were ripped away from their families under false pretenses and then were adopted out for a hefty price. Yet beneath this facade of charity, a horrifying operation was brewing, an operation that was not just about monetary gains, but also about power and control, hidden ingeniously behind the noble mission of child welfare. Behind a veil of secrecy, Tann and her associates spun an intricate network of corruption, deceit, and exploitation. They specifically targeted vulnerable families, utilizing their poverty and lack of education to create exploitative circumstances. These families were often coerced through threats and manipulation into relinquishing their children under false pretenses, such as promises of a better life, or the children were sold off to wealthy families like mere commodities in an inhumane trade of profit. They were herded into unsanitary and neglected conditions that no child should ever experience. Mastermind of this operation didn't just manipulate people, but also the legal system itself. She created an assembly line of forged documents, manipulated birth records, and even had insiders in the legal system who turned a blind eye to her operation. These actions were designed to maintain the legality of her operation. This dark venture was rooted in pain, suffering, and deceit, with Tann at the helm. Tann's operation was a sinister enterprise, profiting not just from the sale of children, but also the systematic exploitation of vulnerable families and manipulation of the legal system. So, what enabled her to slip through the cracks for so long? The answer lies in a complex network of power and influence. Georgia Tann, a notorious child trafficker, was far from operating in isolation. Her illicit operations were fortified by a web of influential individuals, each playing a crucial part in supporting her grim deeds. Among them were two key figures, Judge Camille Kelly and Dr. Walter Sharp. Judge Kelly, known for her swift and hassle-free adoptions, was a critical component of Tan's network. Her willingness to bypass legal obligations and overlook required checks allowed Tan to relocate children with ease. The judge's position of authority not only expedited these transactions, but also lent an illusion of legality to Tan's operations. In tandem with Kelly, Dr. Walter Sharp functioned as Tan's medical accomplice. His role was to create false health documents, further facilitating the kidnapping and trafficking of children. His professional credentials added another layer to Tan's operations, making them appear legitimate in the eyes of unsuspecting parents and authorities alike. The complicity of these individuals, along with others in positions of power, created a protective shield around Tan. Their official capacities offered her an aura of credibility and respectability, which allowed her deceptive deeds to continue unabated and unnoticed for years. This network of complicity meant that those who were supposed to act as barriers against such crimes were, in fact, enabling her operations. Her heinous crimes were left unchecked, hidden securely under the cover of her influential accomplices. The downfall of Georgia Tan did not transpire until her demise in 1950, when the appalling truth came to light. Finally, meticulous investigations were launched, tearing down the deceptive facade. They disclosed a sprawling network of corruption and exploitation that preyed on the defenseless. It was a dark chapter that was held veiled for too long. The aftermath of this exposure sent waves of grief, shock, and indignation throughout society. Innumerable lives were tossed into turmoil, violently severed, and trust in institutional systems was profoundly shaken. The repercussions of Tan's crimes didn't end there, though. The shattered families had to grapple with a tainted past, and the victims had to confront the disquieting reality of their origins. The memory of the atrocities committed by Tan echoes ominously through the generations. The legacy of her crimes continues to shape conversations around child protection and adoption practices. The scandal of the Tennessee Children's Home Society remains an indelible blot on our history, a chilling testament to unchecked power and the exploitation of the innocent. It underscores the imperative for vigilance and transparency in institutions tasked with the welfare of children. This is the story of just 4 of Georgia Tan's victims, ordinary children made extraordinary by their resilience and strength. First, we find Ethel Waters, a young African-American girl born in 1896 who would go on to defy the odds and become a renowned actress and singer. Her early life, however, was marred by instability as she was thrust into the Tennessee Children's Home Society, a pawn in Tan's cruel game. Despite her harsh beginnings, Waters rose above, becoming a beacon of success in the face of adversity. Next in line is Mary Evelyn Dealey, born in 1930. A child of Tan's web of lies, she was adopted by a family in Illinois, growing up oblivious to her true origins. When the curtain was finally drawn back, it revealed a shocking truth that shook her to the core. Yet Dealey's story stands as a testament to the lasting impact of Tan's crimes, a ripple in the pond of history that continues to echo in the present day. Lamar Barnes, a child of 1943, was another piece in Tan's twisted puzzle. Grown up under the shadows of displacement and confusion, Lamar searched for his roots as an adult, a journey that led him to the grim reality of his adoption through Tan's agency. Yet amid the challenges, Lamar found closure, connecting with his surviving relatives, a silver lining in a clouded past. Lastly, we have Sally Ann Roberts, a child of 1939 whose life was irrevocably changed by Tan's actions. Adopted by a family in Louisiana, Sally Ann grew up detached from her birth family. But the revelation of her past didn't break her. Instead, she found her way back to her biological relatives, finding a sense of belonging and closure. Their journey is a reflection, a clear testament to the extraordinary power of the human spirit. This spirit, so undeniably indomitable, ceaselessly seeks the truth. It searches tirelessly for closure, and above everything else, it exhibits an unmatched will to survive. Number 2, Kentucky, the Harlan County Coal Wars. As we leisurely traverse into Kentucky, settling comfortably in the eastern coalfield region, we gradually uncover a state that is distinctly marked by a rich and abundant mining history. Located beneath the rolling green hills lies a hidden treasure, black gold known as coal. This resource has played an instrumental role in shaping Kentucky's economy, with Harlan County at its very heart. But Harlan County's history is more than just coal production. This is where the Harlan County Coal Wars took place, a tumultuous chapter in American labor history, marked by strikes and labor disputes triggered by poor working conditions and unjust wages. This fight for justice was far from local. It drew national attention. In 1931, the miners of Harlan, dissatisfied with their working conditions, joined forces with the National Miners Union. This alliance led to a brutal conflict with the coal operators, lasting multiple years. Despite the miners' vocal protests, the companies remained rigid, refusing to budge or negotiate, thereby escalating the tension and violence. Today, as we journey across the peaceful landscapes of Harlan County, we can still sense the echoes of this stormy past. From derelict coal mines to touching miners' memorials, every corner tells a tale of struggle and resilience. Even today, Harlan County holds its rank as a key coal producer, with its residents doggedly maintaining the legacy of the coal wars through their unwavering dedication to justice. It's not just a chapter from a history book. This story is deeply ingrained in the hills and valleys of this beautiful land, vividly showcasing the resilient spirit of its people and reflecting the soul of a nation. Have you ever wondered what it was like to be a coal miner in the early 20th century? In Harlan County, Kentucky, the miner's life was dictated by coal companies. The low wages and harsh conditions wore them down. The companies exploited the workers to their limits. Tired and weary, they to stir. Discontent and unhappiness started to spread among them. The whispers turned into loud voices demanding rights. Slowly, labor protests took shape. Strikes became a common sight. They were a ray of hope for these underprivileged workers. As the 1910s transitioned into the 1920s, their fight for justice grew intense. This was the beginning of a significant chapter in American labor history. In the hardscrabble hills of Harlan County, the battle lines were drawn. Miners versus coal companies, a struggle for a better life and control. The Harlan County Coal Wars were not just physical battles, but fights for economic freedom and dignity. Miners were paid in company scrip, not dollars, perpetuating debt and exploitation. Coal companies used gun thugs to suppress dissent, resulting in violent incidents like the Battle of Blair Mountain. Despite their brave efforts, miners often faced defeat. Oppressive conditions persisted under the coal companies' control. Yet the miners' struggle left an enduring legacy. Their courage and sacrifices remind us of the power of standing up for justice and dignity, even against insurmountable odds. Today, the legacy of the coal mining era serves as a reminder of the resilience and determination of those who fought against oppression and exploitation in the pursuit of justice and dignity. By examining the dark history of coal mining in Kentucky, we gain insight into the enduring struggles for economic and social justice and the ongoing challenges faced by communities impacted by extractive industries. As we reflect on the stories of those who toiled in the coal mines and company towns of Appalachia, let us honor their memory by continuing to advocate for fair labor practices, environmental stewardship, and equitable opportunities for all. Only by confronting the injustices of the past can we build a more just and sustainable future for generations to come. Number 1, Alabama. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study. Picture this, if you will. You place your faith and trust in certain institutions, and then imagine the shock, the betrayal when these very institutions deceive you. Picture further being subjected to an unkind experiment, an experiment so severe it would alter your life forever. This wasn't just imagination. For around 600 African American men in the early 20th century, lured by the promise of free healthcare, these men, many of whom were sharecroppers with limited access to medical services, were recruited for what came to be known as the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. Initiated in 1932 by the U.S. Public Health Service in Macon County, Alabama, that was designed to understand the long-term effects of syphilis. But underneath this guise of medical aid, there was a chilling truth. Men were not offered proper medical treatment. Instead, they were used as subjects in a harrowing experiment that denied them access to effective syphilis treatments, even when penicillin became the standard cure. For 4 decades, these men would suffer in silence, unknowingly part of one of the most unethical medical studies in American history. As the years passed, the devastating effects of untreated syphilis began to manifest. The men were left to grapple with severe health consequences. Neurological damage was rampant, causing symptoms ranging from muscle weakness to paralysis. Blindness, too, was not uncommon, a cruel irony for men kept in the dark about their condition. The ultimate price, however, was death. This was not merely a failure of healthcare, but a systemic betrayal that laid bare the disturbing reality of racism and medical exploitation. The men of Tuskegee were not seen as patients in need of care, but as subjects in an experiment. Their lives, their health, their humanity were disregarded in the pursuit of data. The Tuskegee syphilis study stands as a stark reminder of the deep-seated racial discrimination that permeated every aspect of American society, even the sanctity of healthcare. They were victims of an unthinkable violation of human rights, a grim testament to the depths of racial discrimination and medical exploitation. In 1972, the veil of deception was finally lifted. A whistleblower, appalled by the gross violation of human rights, exposed the Tuskegee syphilis study to the public. The country was aghast as the 40-year-long deception was unveiled, revealing a chilling tale of medical exploitation and racial discrimination. The outrage was palpable, sparking protests and demands for justice. The government could no longer turn a blind eye. In response to this shocking revelation, sweeping reforms in research ethics and patient protections were enacted. New laws were put in place to ensure informed consent, transparency, and respect for human dignity in all medical research. The US government in 1974 issued a formal apology to the participants and their families, acknowledging the profound harm caused by the study. The horrific legacy of the Tuskegee syphilis study forced a reckoning and brought about much-needed change. This dark chapter in history served as a catalyst for a seismic shift towards ethical conduct in medical research. The Tuskegee syphilis study remains a haunting reminder of a painful past. It's a stark testament to the enduring implications of systemic racism and the vital importance of upholding ethical standards in healthcare. It unveils a harsh reality, a time when the health and dignity of African American men were grossly disregarded under the guise of scientific exploration. This dark chapter of history underscores the need for continual reflection and action. It challenges us to confront the systemic racism that persists in our society and to relentlessly advocate for fair and ethical treatment for all, regardless of race or ethnicity. It's a stern reminder that the sanctity of human life should always trump scientific curiosity. The lessons learned from the Tuskegee syphilis study should serve as a beacon, guiding us towards a more equitable and humane future in healthcare and beyond. And remember, the pursuit of knowledge is the key to uncovering the mysteries of the past and building a better future for generations to come. Join us next time as we continue to uncover the hidden truths that shape our understanding of history and society. But before we end, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more dark history, the mysterious and strange that you were never meant to know about. Thank you for watching Mystery Minds. Until next time, stay curious.